This is a recording. Welcome to the Locked Tome, the spooky sister channel to the Open Book. To kick off this horror-loving space, I am repurposing some of my older videos, originally published to TOB, which were admittedly a little too horror-centric in nature. We're splitting vibes and splitting skulls over here, so if anything in this video feels a little odd in the editing, that's why. I can't wait to get the channel fully up and running. Thanks for stopping by, and please stick around if you also enjoy all things horror, and if you'd prefer cozy vibes, I will kindly direct you to the Open Book channel instead, where over there I have cookies. End of recording.
Hey there, and today I wanted to talk about another movie. This one I mentioned before, but I said I wanted to watch Jaws first, and that didn't end up happening. And I wanted to do this before I lost the motivation, so here goes on a more detailed movie review than the last ones I did, where I just picked apart the writing and the characters. This is going to also involve directing and various choices made in the process of filming. So, when I watched Backcountry for the first time, I did not enjoy myself, and when that happens, I have to go back and assess why. Unlike Seven Sisters or The Circle, where I had a problem with the message that I could easily break down, Backcountry left me disoriented because of its tone and pacing. These are caused by directing choices rather than writing, so it was a lot harder for me to break it down, as I don't normally notice these subtle elements to such an extreme where it ruins something for me. Backcountry is the story of a city couple on what's supposed to be a modestly romantic camping trip gone creature feature horror. The allegedly cute vibes set up in the first and second act were perhaps undercut for me by the familiarity of the scenes. The movie was shot relatively close to where I grew up, which is I think it was in Powassan. I forget exactly where they shot it, but I've literally been there before. So I wasn't awed by the scenic beauty, or rather, I guess, distracted by it like other viewers were. I had a much better opportunity to pick apart the characters with this adventure feeling so commonplace. So what first caught me off guard was the tone of the intro. They didn't seem especially excited to be going on this trip. Them just getting off the elevator at their apartment building uses gray tones and dramatic music, as if trying to enhance something ominous that's just not there yet. They slap you in the face with something horrible is inevitably going to happen, and that doesn't leave you much time to connect with the characters. You're just waiting for them to die. Not to mention, I just personally didn't find them very inspiring, but we'll get into that later. The tone gets worse with unnecessary tension because of everyone the couple actually talks to along their tragedy. The park ranger that signs them into the park warns them what not to do and that they'll need a map, so on, and Alex, being cocky, doesn't need one and mentions their intended hiking destination, only to be told by the ranger that the area has been off limits due to hooligan activity, and if they go there, they will be fined. This is set up with no payoff. They in no way, shape, or form run into a conflict with hooligans. What would have made sense would be him warning them about a bear that's gotten too comfy around campers, or even just reported a growing amount of dead animals in the area. Jen and Alex find a deer carcass, so that would line up. And the threat could not only be the foretold bear, or even better, a rogue hunter, aka Brad, who they run into after this. When they leave the ranger, the shot stays on his face too long, and he watches them leave. His tone, "have fun," isn't genuine, and it's overall creepy. But they will not see this man again in the movie, and this is part of the lack of payoff that the movie creates. Once they are on their trip and they're camping, they run into Brad, a forest tour leader with a bunch of poached fish. Jen invites him to have dinner with them like any normal, friendly person would, but Alex is immediately defensive and skeptical about their new company. As they talk and have dinner, tension between the two men gets honestly ridiculous. Their testosterone levels go through the roof, and they have a verbal pissing contest over Jen. Brad tries calling Alex out on not knowing what he's doing, camping, and repeatedly uses his dickish dialogue to low-key tell Jen that she deserves better, aka him. The whole scene left me slapping my forehead because it felt so dumb and unnecessary. They just met. They don't know each other, and there was an instant eruption of toxic masculinity. People don't actually act like that. And if they do, I hope I never meet them. That aside, Brent leaves, and Alex ends up yelling at Jen for inviting him in the first place, like she had any idea that Brad would behave so rudely. This scene was supposed to be foreshadowing. Brad was supposed to have left the audience feeling like Alex perhaps doesn't know what he's doing and really doesn't deserve Jen, but it doesn't. It leaves us worried that this weirdly aggressive man is a threat and going to come back and fuck with them, but he doesn't. Both the tension built between the couple's interactions with the park ranger and Brad never pay off, and it ends up feeling like tension for tension's sake. This criticism, however, would not hold up in an essay arguing the exact opposite, because if you take Backcountry as a whole, there are points to be made for their inclusion and development. The problem is you shouldn't have to think this hard about something so simple for scenes to feel like they belong in a movie. So first let's talk about pacing, and then we'll talk about what the point of the movie actually was, in my opinion, or from what I have deduced after watching it 3 times now, because that's just who I am. Brad leaving them, in my opinion, is the end of Act 1. Act 2 involves Alex and Jen just literally hiking and camping, having cute moments, and Alex running into foreshadowing like a footprint of like a bear footprint, a snapped tree, a dead animal. Act 3 starts when they get lost, I suppose. So I drew this timeline up against the play bar to mark the transitions and better display how weird the pacing is. This is 100% spoilers because I'm showing you and talking about the timeline, so if you intend on watching this movie ever, stop here. Here, I don't know if this is actually going to show up very well. Why is it so hard to hold a timeline straight? Am I dumb as heck? Yes, I am dumb as heck. Okay, great. So anyway, here I've marked the most notable moments. I wish I could see what I was doing. This is where they meet the ranger. It's a very small little conversation. And then after a little bit, they run into Brad. Brad takes up this much of their time. It is completely filled with Brad being a dick, building tension between characters. And that ends around a third of the way through because I didn't include them arguing about him afterwards in the zone. So meeting everybody, Brad, so on and so forth. Tension between human beings in this movie ends about a third of the way through the movie. And that's not all that weird, except that they get lost before halfway through the movie. This is when they get lost. They then spend a solid fourth of the movie reconciling with their situation before the climax. Alex is actually a terrible camper, and they get screwed. He hides Jen's phone on her in the car because he didn't trust her not to use it on their romantic trip, in which he intended to propose. He dropped a canoe on his foot and lost a toenail, arguably infected, and left a bloody sock outside their tent, which also arguably interested the bear in the first place. Not that he's really been around. We've got a couple hints of it, but nothing sizable. Alex didn't bring a map because he's too good for that. And he ties their food bag poorly and it gets stolen by raccoons. The climax, which happens here, noted as bear, is the first time that the bear actually physically shows up on their radar, and Alex spends a good 5 minutes getting wrecked by it. Props to the gore team, by the way. It looked really good. This section, this whole last fourth of the movie, is literally Jen running away from the bear. Poorly, I might add. The first thing she does is tumble down a hill and get a concussion by smashing her head off a rock. Shots are blurry, and the music is long, dramatic notes meant to stress her situation. Until the last bit where the music gets weird, it makes it feel like it's going to be some kind of like redemption event, but really she's just continuing to stumble around until she finds Brad's tour group in the end. Brad has been absent for so long, and the setup of his conflict with Alex was so dumb that it's not fulfilling he's the one who rescues her. I would have preferred literally anyone else. It didn't matter. It didn't matter who found her at this point. The point is just that she got found. It is not enhancing the plot at all. So do you see how long of the movie is spent with her fuzzily running around away from the bear? As you can see, the pacing and the tone threw me the fuck off. But what it all comes back to for me is always the message and the character development. So what was the point of the story? Was it just a tragic movie based on a true story? Which, yes, it is based on a true story. It's come up in our newspaper a couple times, something like this happens, and it's shitty, but not very common. Anyway, the answer to the question is that I'm going to go with no, because they put more effort than can be easily visible into setting up Alex as incompetent. When Jen is escaping, she uses both the bear spray and the flare she brought with her to keep it away, things which Alex blatantly made fun of her for bringing at the start of the trip. Backcountry is a story of hubris. Alex is killed and Jen gets to live because of the choices they made individually, and he truly did not deserve her. In these stories, though, we're supposed to feel sympathy for the protagonist, the tragic hero, because of the inevitability of it all. But I really, really didn't. Alex intentionally and repeatedly made bad decisions that doesn't make me feel bad for him when his fate arrives. And when it does, right before the bear kills him and Jen are on good terms. She forgives Alex, and then he says, we're gonna be all right, into immediately getting wrecked by a bear. I realized the casual film observer would accept that as a redemption for Alex because they made up, which in turn makes his death tragic, but honestly, at no point was he a good enough person for me to be invested in him. The alternate way of viewing these things is to get satisfied with his death, because he deserved it for all the things he did. He was dumb, yeah, and literally a jerk half the time, but that wasn't enough to make me hate him. So there's no satisfaction in the long-awaited death that was planned for him, no matter how I look at it. The weird thing about Backcountry, and the reason I wanted to make this video, was because upon analyzing the script, the choices, the writing, the characters, the tone, the pacing, the directing angles, well, it was well put together. It was very intentional. But at the same time, I can nitpick all of these things apart and say that I really didn't enjoy this movie. It felt like they put all of these elements together in a very poor way, so that it was off-putting. It was jarring and weird, and I don't think it was a terrible movie. I just think there's a lot to be learned about trying too hard, I think. All of these choices were very intentional, but that just made it bad. It made it worse. Anyway, that's my take on Backcountry. Let me know if you're a film analysis junkie, which I'm not, but how you felt about it. I looked for other reviews on it and I couldn't find any, so I was wondering what people really had to say about the choices of the directing, writing, characters, so on and so forth. Because the only one that I saw was of a chick talking about it and literally crying because it was so sad that this happened. She was just saying that she enjoyed herself and that it was good, but she didn't pick apart really what made it good for her, and the things that she gave as examples for it were the things that I had a problem with, mostly because I thought too hard about it. But anyway, let me know how you felt about it. Did you watch it? How'd you, did you find this pacing odd? I would have been more satisfied if in the end Brad had have been a problem somehow, or any of the setup that they'd made had eventually paid off. The bear is made to feel like a force of nature, and a bear is not a force of nature, and it's also not a fated thing. It was kind of an in-between, because either you take into account that there was setup for it because of everything Alex did, or you just say this was sad and always going to happen in the first place, which is how they treated the intro in the tone. So which kind of story was it? Well, thanks for watching. Another movie critique or review, analysis, whatever kind of weird discussion this is I'm trying to have. And stay tuned. I have been watching a lot of movies, and I've been finding more and more that I have a lot of problems with the choices that are made in making the movies. So it's just going to become a much more prominent part of the channel than I intended. And I'm sorry.